Hi, Recap Chaos here. Today we are going to watch a science fiction thriller movie named Titan. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The story of the movie is set in the year 2048, during a time when the Earth had been depleted of all its resources, leading to countries fighting over the remaining ones. The focus is on Rick's family, who are brought to a magnificent mansion along with 13 other families. They soon discover that they have been brought there for research purposes and experiments will be conducted on them by a team of scientists. The head of the project, a professor, reveals that within the next 10 years, everything on Earth will be finished, leaving nothing behind for humans to survive on. The only solution, he says, is to relocate to Titan, a massive moon with abundant resources. However, it is currently impossible for humans to live there due to the presence of methane gas and nitrogen in the air, which create a hostile environment. In addition to the hostile environment on Titan, the moon is also extremely cold, making it impossible for humans to survive without modifications to their bodies. This is why the families were brought to the mansion for experiments. Out of 5,000 people, they were chosen to undergo the necessary changes. Rick, who we met at the beginning of the story, and his family also volunteered for the project. The doctor explains to Rick that he will receive a series of injections over the next week, which will enable his body to process more nitrogen than oxygen. During a party at their home, Rick's wife, Abby, becomes sick after drinking too much. When Rick goes to tend to her, he notices that she has a high fever. A few days later, all the families are taken to a water pool for an experiment to test their ability to survive without breathing for an extended period of time. During the experiment at the water pool, all but 2 of the families were able to hold their breath and stay underwater for an extended period. Rick and a girl remained in the water for an impressive 40 minutes. However, the girl's breath began to decrease, and she had to come out of the water, while Rick's heartbeat continued to decrease. Eventually, he came out of the water and received applause from everyone for lasting the longest. Later, Rick undergoes surgery and disappears from his bed that same night. His wife, Abby, finds him in the kitchen, putting ice on his body. Although it was supposed to be very cold on Titan, Rick is feeling extremely hot. Abby brings him more ice, and Rick reveals that he doesn't feel cold at all. This effect was also observed in the other people being prepared to go to Titan. They needed to be able to withstand extreme cold, and their bodies had been modified to ensure they wouldn't feel the cold. Despite their body modifications, the inhabitants were still facing a significant challenge in the form of methane gas and nitrogen. They were instructed to swim in methane-infused water and given masks to reduce their nitrogen intake while also being subjected to intense physical activity as part of their preparation for Titan. Days went by, and one day, Rick noticed that he was experiencing hair loss in the bathroom. The same thing was happening to another boy, leading everyone to conclude that it was the result of the medicines and experiments being done to prepare them for Titan. Unfortunately, a girl died, and everyone was worried because they had all been given the same medication, putting their lives at risk. That night, everyone gathered at Rick's house to discuss their concerns. In the midst of all this chaos, one of Rick's friends becomes very angry and attacks his wife. The experiment was affecting him in negative ways. Everyone is alarmed and concerned by this violent outburst. The following day, the doctor visits Rick's home and tries to calm everyone down by telling them that the girl who died was already sick before coming to the mansion. However, Rick knew that there was something amiss. That night, he vomits blood, which terrifies him. Abby, who is also a doctor, takes a blood sample from Rick and analyzes it in the lab. She discovers that several unmentioned chemicals were added to Rick's body during the experiments, which explains his deteriorating health. The next day, Rick is shown in the water, and his skin is peeling off. He is frightened by the experience, and it's clear that something needs to be done quickly to save him and the others from further harm. Abby talks to the project's head professor about her concerns regarding Rick's condition, but he remains unresponsive and leaves. Rick undergoes an eye surgery to enable him to see in the dark, but his eyes start bleeding when he returns home. Abby tries to reach out to the professor again, but he ignores her. Meanwhile, a man who was previously angry becomes even more violent and kills his wife, leading to military intervention. Abby starts suspecting that important information is being kept from her. She decides to investigate and goes to the location where all the experiment files are kept. There, she discovers that the girl who died was not actually sick as they were told. Abby and Rick are visited by the professor the next day, who confesses that the experiments were done to prepare people for Titan. He admits that the outcome of the experiments is uncertain, as everyone's DNA is different and the effects of the medicine cannot be predicted. However, Rick's body was found to be able to tolerate the experiments better than others. The professor reveals that the experiments will turn the test subjects into Titan creatures once completed. The professor's admission shocks Abby and Rick. They realize that they were used as test subjects without their knowledge, and that their lives have been irreversibly changed. They feel angry and betrayed by the professor and the organization. They also fear for their safety and the safety of others who underwent the experiments. Abby urges the professor to stop the experiments immediately and to disclose the truth to the public. She tells him that the consequences of the experiments are too great to be hidden. The professor agrees to take responsibility for his actions and to cooperate with the authorities. He promises to do everything he can to prevent further harm. Abby and Rick leave the house feeling relieved that the truth has been revealed. They are grateful to have each other and to have survived the experiments. They know that they will face many challenges in the future, but they are ready to face them together. Rick and his friend were the only survivors among those who had undergone the experiments. Rick underwent another eye surgery which enabled him to see in the dark and feel things while in the water. However, all the other experimental subjects died. When Abby, Rick's wife, visited him in the lab, she was surprised by the change in his appearance. Rick had lost all his hair and ears, and he could only communicate in a low-frequency voice, making it difficult for him to talk to his family. Despite the drastic changes in his body, Rick recognized Abby and their son. Nonetheless, he was unable to communicate with them effectively. After returning home, Rick's friend visits him and reveals that she killed her husband in anger. The military arrives to take both of them away, deeming them dangerous. Rick's friend is killed by the military, but Rick uses his newfound strength to fight and escape. Abby follows Rick and discovers that he can now read minds. The military eventually catches up with them, and at Abby's urging, Rick surrenders himself. He is taken back to the lab, where Professor Abby reveals that Rick must be injected with a substance that will erase his memories of his old life. This is necessary for his upcoming mission to Titan, as his new abilities and physical changes make him a valuable asset. Abby injects Rick with the memory-wiping serum, despite his objections to losing his past. After administering the injection, Abby leaves with her friend and son. However, Rick soon discovers that the serum was not effective and proceeds to attack and kill the soldiers who come to take him to Titan. He returns home to his wife and son, who are overjoyed to see him. Unfortunately, the military arrives with a professor and insists that Rick must go to Titan because he can no longer live as a human on Earth. Abby understands the gravity of the situation and advises Rick to leave. Ultimately, Rick is sent to Titan. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.